Every day we encounter institutions, structures, and vast mechanisms which seem to be immutable laws of nature. Yet perhaps one of the most liberating and most troubling realizations is that nearly everything we interact with only exists if you believe. What is a law? What is a rule? Understandings of behaviors and practices. Often people may follow these because they align with a deeper understood principle within a society, or because they fear punitive action should they violate them. Yet rarely ever will any infraction actually be followed up on. Largely, rules are followed because people understand them to simply be the way that things are done. Patterns of behavior predicated on common understanding. Yet without that common understanding, rarely, if ever, would there even be a mechanism to enforce just about any rule. And what of the vast institutions? The powerful structures which seem so indomitable. Historically, law enforcement would be done by as few as 1 or 2 men, while most practical enforcement was done societally, an effort of the entire town. And now the vast bureaucratic structures which extend surrounding all of our society appear as though they must be ironclad, for there are so many people within their halls keeping the machines whirring. Yet think for a moment. Imagine a powerful institution. What would happen if people simply stopped believing in it? If simply one day, people no longer believed that taxes were valid? They simply decided not to pay. There would be no mechanism at all for tax collection. What of the government itself? If people simply didn't believe in it, then it would simply be rooms filled with bureaucrats and legislators talking to themselves. The cultural rules we follow, the mechanisms which appear to run society, exist entirely by perpetuating the story that they are more real than they are. Look at our vast financial markets. Imagine for a moment that there is a stock exploding, minting new fortunes every day. It doesn't matter if this company is profitable or even very much real. Those fortunes will be created all the same if people believe that there is value truly there. Crowds of market participants could look on a stock, each bidding it up, seeing others bidding it up and imagining that therefore there must be value. This propagates as more and more buy, seeing others buying so they buy. The more people buy, the more new people want to buy as well. And at a certain point, the original conditions of the actual company mean very little to the market. People are buying because they are buying. They are buying because they believe. This in turn improves the cost of capital for the company, allowing it to build more, showing new signs of value, making people believe more, perpetuating the cycle. Yet if people simply stopped believing, this could all go away overnight. The moment the belief ends, fortunes could be destroyed far faster than they were made, as people sell because others sell, and others sell because they do not believe. Ultimately, every social institution relies on belief. We imagine there to be ironclad rule structures. Think, for example, the delegations of power within the government. Yet there is no enforcement mechanism. There is no underlying structure that actually determines who has what power. The court could assume to itself the power over all decision-making by ruling it such, so long as the population believes in their legitimacy. The legislature could and did create their own courts, or the executive could assume to himself dictatorial power, much like Abraham Lincoln or Franklin Roosevelt, and that power will in turn become real because people believe in it. And same to the restrictions that have been built up. It seems as though there are powerful firewalls, keeping certain figures from certain powers. Yet if the right figure were to emerge, and simply joke about those rules, joke about those walls, and the population no longer believed in those barriers, then they would cease to exist. So what do we do with this? This may seem alarming, as though our society at large is holding on by a thread of our own imagination. Yet, for a calm and thoughtful mind, it gives remarkable opportunity. For the most fundamental underlying social power of our age is that of narrative. Nearly everything we interact with every day is a projection built on narrative. People wake up and work themselves into a frenzy, reading stories and posts on social media. People find themselves terrified, sitting in their homes glued to screens. And people become fanatic, absolutely dedicated to a notion that was propagated by someone that they will never meet. These are all manifestations of the same thing. That which is true because we believe. There are powerful criminals with vast fortunes, bosses of vast crime syndicates with fabulous wealth, existing in positions where they will not be touched, nor can they be touched by governments. And the prerequisite to amassing this power was understanding the idea that first you must imagine the laws do not exist, seeing no legitimacy in them, and simply suggestions from others. And while we may find this example objectionable, seeing the heinous behaviors of some of these criminals, what about the example of the market participant? If you found yourself in that frenzied bubble of story pushing up stocks, what would happen if you did not believe? Perhaps you could time this bubble, paying attention to the story and how the narrative is constructed more than the fantasy. Or perhaps remaining more cautious, you could see the story for what it is and choose to avoid it altogether. People talk about future earnings all the time in finance, but is there actually any such thing as future earnings? However you wish to play it, the main point is to focus on the narrative itself, on how it is constructed and propagated, and not place value in the story being told unto itself. How about power? In order to amass power, one must first imagine that the obstacles do not exist. Some of the greatest figures of our history were bound by convention and rules that seemed to be impenetrable barriers, yet they simply told their own story. They laughed at the rules, and when their stories became more believable, their power in turn became believed, and as it was believed, it became true. Yet this is not something simply for the consideration of political power players, criminals, nor market traders. This is something we run up against every day. Every day there is a frenzy of stories meant to terrify and rile passions. Turn on the TV and you may find yourself convinced by one of two dichotomous stories. Hop into social media and you will be convinced that the end is near, that everything is falling apart. You will find yourself wrapped up in frenzies and made delusional by narrative. Yet this also presents a remarkable opportunity. For in this age of rapidly propagating narrative, if you become the one to study narrative construction, then you gain access to a meta layer of reality, one which you can use to your own benefit. Something you may find increasingly common are stories based around non-belief themselves. For example, telling people that a great figure, whom many believe in, is losing belief, or telling people that a great project, an endeavor that people put so much faith in, is losing the confidence of the people. These are stories of non-belief, told by people who understand this principle. The idea being is to get people to believe that others don't believe in a notion. Yet you can choose to not believe that either. Now this gets us into a quite tricky predicament. How do you believe in anything then? The answer is simple, and to go around narrative. Every day you will hear convincing stories, some more convincing than others. But when it is told to you as a story, and you see it propagated, filled with emotional elements designed to garner as much activity as possible, simply ask yourself what this story tells, and what the effect would be if people were to believe in it. And you too can choose to simply not believe. This is very powerful in financial markets, like questioning a short report, telling a story of great fraud and failure, written from the perspective of a firm who is already shorting a company. This is very powerful in social dynamics and politics, and you must simply ask yourself what the effect of the story is. And if you can understand the effect of the story and who wrote it, then you gain deeper understanding into the interests of all parties, and you can ride the wave of narrative itself. As we go forward, this will become more and more difficult, Narrative construction has become extraordinarily sophisticated, yet simply remaining mindful of what narrative is gives one a remarkable power. Most information everyone will encounter on a given day that exists within social propagating systems, such as news media or social media, will simply be narrative and noise. So look at something. It may be salacious, may be exciting, and may be designed to solicit outrage. But ask yourself if that information actually has any real effect. And if it doesn't, it is likely noise. And if it is catching like wildfire, getting people worked up and causing profound psychological shifts, then simply dig a little deeper to understand what the story is doing, as it is most likely narrative. I don't mean to say that this will be an easy task, but this is one that can be practiced. And to the practitioner who has dedicated much time and finesse to this, it will yield remarkable abilities. Abilities to act on the meta layer of social systems, riding the wave of narrative, seeing through deceptions, and jumping ahead in the story, as humans like to make their stories manifest. You can look upon a story, and knowing how humans think, jump ahead in the narrative, knowing what a resolution that will be satisfactory to people is, acting on the next step in the narrative before it has been written. This is an extremely powerful layer, and nearly everything we interact with, on any large scale in our social systems, is all predicated on belief. I'm not attempting to make an argument that we all become nihilistic and forego society, but for one who wants additional autonomy, it's very worthwhile to remember that it's only real if you believe.